The new owners will tear out this wallpaper. They will install climate control. They will make it a modern, efficient space. And that, Mother, is precisely what it should be. Margot simply watched her daughter, the woman she had raised, now a sleek, sharp creature in a tailored silk blouse, a woman who carried her ambition like an impenetrable shield. The lie you've told yourself, Margot whispered, is that if you bury a memory deep enough, it ceases to exist. But history is like the tide, my love. It always returns. It always claims what is its. The clock on the wall chimed 6 times, the sound brittle and definitive. Ilara checked her elegant, slim watch. Her taxi was due at 7. Her flight, a red-eye to a distant humming metropolis where the sea was just a rumor, departed at midnight. "I need to pack," Ilara said, her tone professional, closing the subject. She retreated up the winding, narrow staircase, not trusting herself to look back. In her childhood bedroom, the small, circular window facing east was open, letting in the cool, invigorating rush of the evening air. The moon, a perfect, pale sliver, was already visible over the dark, turbulent water. Ilara didn't pack clothes. She didn't pack books. She opened the small, leather-bound satchel she had hidden under the floorboards for 20 years. Inside, she placed 3 small items: a smooth, perfectly white stone she had plucked from the water as a girl, a tarnished silver locket containing a photograph of a laughing young woman with her mother's eyes, a woman Ilara barely remembered, slyly remembered, and a crumpled seawater-stained map with a single cryptic point circled in fading blue ink. The labyrinth's end. She zipped the bag, its contents weighing less than a breath. She looked out at the churning black ocean, her heart a drumbeat of reckless finality. I am not coming back. She walked out of the room, leaving the door ajar, the faint, lingering scent of salt and old lavender quickly filling the vacuum of her departure. Downstairs, she heard her mother's rhythmic, slow footsteps moving through the drawing room, the sound a quiet, haunting measure of their irreparable severance. Ilara paused at the front door, her hand resting on the smooth, cold brass knob. She had a moment, one last chance to turn back, to tell the entire truth, to postpone the flight and face the reckoning. But the vision of the condo, sterile, enclosed, 1,000 miles from the liberating vastness of the sea, snapped her resolve. She pulled the door open, the sound of the ocean rushing in, a deafening, magnificent roar of freedom. She stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind her with a soft, decisive click. The taxi was waiting, its yellow gleam a sharp, jarring contrast to the deep twilight. As she walked toward it, she heard a sound from the house. Not a cry or a gasp, but a single resonant note, like the striking of a solitary bell. Margot, sitting at the old, unplayed piano, beginning a melancholy, tempestuous prelude. Ilara paused, the salt spray touching her face. She felt a profound, exhilarating ache. It wasn't just a house she had sold. It was an inheritance, a lineage, a piece of her own wild soul. And now she was free to find out what truly remained. She got into the cab, not looking back at the house that was no longer theirs, the house she had betrayed, the house whose very memory was now the map to her desperate, alluring future. "Airport," she instructed the driver, her voice clear, confident, and entirely devoid of the lie she had just lived. The velocity of release. Chapter 2. The taxi sped away from the coast, the ocean's vast, dark silhouette shrinking rapidly in the rearview mirror until it was merely a hairline crack of black on the horizon. Ilara did not look back. Oh. Instead, she leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, inhaling the stale, recycled air of the taxi, a scent of cheap upholstery and fleeting lives, and found it intoxicating. It was the smell of anonymity, a radical departure from the perpetual, clean salt scour of Azure Bay. The sensation she felt was not the anticipated wave of guilt or the heavy anchor of remorse. It was the sheer, dizzying velocity of release. The sail was a definitive action, a final severing that eliminated the possibility of retreat. She had burned the bridge meticulously down to the very pilings, ensuring that the history she had fled could not follow her across the chasm. In her lap, the small leather satchel felt curiously light, almost buoyant. It was a vessel carrying not ballast, but promise. The entire fortune from the beach house, a sum that ensured a life of enviable ease, was safely routed through encrypted trusts awaiting her access in the new country. But this meager bag held the true currency, the fragments of a mystery her mother had always fiercely guarded. She ran a thumb over the smooth, cold surface of the white stone she had packed. It was not just any stone. It was a whisper stone found deep within the tidal pools when she was 8, a shard of pure quartz that seemed to hum with an inner luminescence. Margot had confiscated it instantly, a rare moment of maternal strictness, claiming it was too precious to lose. Finding it again, tucked away in the very back of a desk drawer, was an act of quiet reclamation. The locket was more challenging. It was tarnished silver, almost blackened by age and disuse. The photograph inside was grainy, depicting a woman with a wild, joyful mane of dark hair, her eyes mirroring Margot's, yet utterly different. This was her grandmother, Saline, a name that had always been spoken in the house with an air of profound, elegant sorrow, a figure shrouded in the delicate haze of an unfinished tragedy. Ilara had never been allowed to ask about her. Now, was carrying Soline's laughter across continents. And then there was the map. She carefully unfolded the piece of parchment. It was brittle, stained with the indelible patina of salt and time. It wasn't a modern nautical chart. It appeared to be a hand-drawn sketch depicting a section of the northern coastline, the familiar contours of Azure Bay, barely recognizable under the fanciful, archaic script. The circled point marked the labyrinth's end, sat inland, near a dense, impenetrable forest known locally as the Witch's Woods. Ilara had found it years ago, hidden in the lining of a Victorian trunk that had belonged to Soline. She had shown it to Margot only once, and the resulting cold fury had been enough to deter any further inquiry for 2 decades. Margot had been terrified of something. Ilara realized now, with the chilling clarity of hindsight, that her mother's fierce devotion to the house wasn't rooted in sentimental attachment, but in containment. Azure Bay was the secure vault, the unbreakable seal on a history Margot desperately wanted to remain buried. By selling it, Ilara hadn't just secured her freedom. She had pried open the lid of that vault. The cab pulled up to the vast, humming spectacle of the international terminal. The airport was a cavern of brilliant, sterile light, a stark contrast to the shadowy, intimate twilight of the coast. Here, Ilara felt herself dissolving into the great, flowing river of humanity, a delicious sensation of being entirely unremarkable and untraceable. She moved with an almost surgical efficiency, gliding through check-in and security. The weight of her past life, her career, her social obligations, the constant performance of the dutiful daughter had fallen away entirely. Her tailored clothes, once a uniform of expectation, now felt like the disguise of a jewel thief, elegant and effective. At the gate, she ordered a glass of exceptional champagne. As the golden liquid settled in the delicate flute, catching the harsh overhead light, Elara raised it in a silent, solitary toast. To the truth, she mentally consecrated the moment, wherever it leads. She thought of Margot, alone now in the silent, echoing grandeur of the house. Would she be weeping, perhaps staring blankly at the unblemished walls of her empty room? Elara dismissed the thought instantly. Margot was too resilient for histrionics, too composed for collapse. No, Margot would be calculating. She would be moving through the house, systematically assessing the damage, perhaps already formulating a response. Elara smiled, a slow, predatory curve of her lips. Margot, in her fierce protectiveness of the past, had underestimated her daughter's capacity for cold-blooded strategy. She believed Elara sought only comfort. She failed to see the deeper hunger for illumination. Elara wasn't just escaping, she was hunting. And the 3 small artifacts in her bag were the compass and the key. The final boarding call for her flight, Flight 419 to Valerius, was announced in a smooth, multilingual chime. Valerius, a city on the edge of the known world, a place where history and myth blurred into a mesmerizing, complicated tapestry. A place where the sun was always a little fiercer, the shadows a little longer, and secrets were kept not behind closed doors, but in the open and disguised by their own outlandish grandeur. As she stood gathering her bag, she caught her reflection in the glass wall of the terminal, a woman on the brink of an exhilarating precipice. She was shedding her name, her locale, her identity, trading stability for the blinding rush of the unknown. I am a fugitive of sentiment, she thought, the champagne a warm, reckless glow in her chest, and I am never coming back. She walked down the jet bridge, a narrow tunnel connecting the old world to the new, feeling the distinct, thrilling certainty that the most dangerous journey was not the miles she would cover, but the history she was finally daring to uncover.